Aim response curve settings are kinda overlooked in Warzone, and when I've made videos in the past I've suggested dynamic is the way to go, but now I really think linear is the best setting for the majority of players. I'm gonna quickly talk about what a linear response curve is compared to dynamic and standard, along with their advantages before discussing the best ways to get the most out of the linear response curve. So a linear curve simply refers to a continuing steady relationship between an input and an output. In this instance, we're talking about our analog movement and our on-screen response to that. So when we move our sticks, we get the exact rate of response when aiming around in Warzone. This is actually instinctively what we all think is the case anyway when playing games. Sometimes though, games such as Warzone and Call of Duty have some built-in algorithms in some settings to try and assist you in game or suit your playstyle. For example, if we look at the standard response curve, we see an accelerating line of fit between analog movement and the rotation speed on screen. This essentially means if we move our thumbsticks the exact same rate as we did on linear, then on standard we'll actually move across the screen slower initially before accelerating into the same speed of movement. The slower initial movement feels comfortable to most Call of Duty players because this is the default setting, and the advantage of this is that you have more control in the initial phase of movement, meaning you can be more accurate. For more advanced players though, dynamic has been a popular option with its decelerating line of fit, which means you get quick movement initially before slowing down. So in theory, you can snap onto people quicker. The advantage linear has over these two response curves is that it's much easier to build up a consistency trained into your muscle memory, rather than trying to adapt to an accelerating or decelerating response curve. So every time you hop on and play games with your controller, you're getting the same movement on screen relative to your stick input. On top of the ease of consistency every time you play, the linear response curve helps with small adjustments in your aim. Because you're not speeding up or slowing down with your aim, which happens with the other response curves, you're not having to live adapt to them. So the advantage of linear when you're not live adapting to these different response curves is that you can budge your aim just a millimeter to the left or right or whatever with a high sense of control. This is particularly important on big maps, such as those on Warzone where a lot of your gunfights are at medium to long distances, where you need to zone in on the enemy as fast as possible, but in a controlled way. Now of course you can do this with the other response curves too. I'm not saying they're completely useless, I'm just saying for most players, linear is actually going to be best. Now let's talk about how to actually utilize a linear response curve in your gameplay. You do it in two ways, practicing your movement and practicing your aim. So if you have Modern Warfare or Vanguard in a few months, go into a private lobby and load up a map without bots or anything. If you have just Warzone, a Plunder game, or a limited time game mode like Clash will be just fine. When you're in the game, just practice your movement alone without any distractions. You'll notice a subtle difference compared to dynamic and standard, particularly when you're moving around corners and coming out of slide cancels. So you're gonna try and mimic your most common movement types over and over again, and I'd recommend doing this for about 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll start to have that built into your muscle memory just a little bit, ready for practicing your aim. I know it sounds a little boring, and well it can be, but it'll lay the foundations for using the linear response curve properly. Now we want to progress to playing with bots. For those who only have Warzone, you're sadly going to have to again play Plunder or a limited time game mode, or skip this step altogether. But essentially what we do here is keep practicing those movements from the empty lobbies and start adding different styles of aiming into it, so you can slide cancel around a corner and try and snap onto a target. In addition, you can try and set up hard aiming and then swing your aim onto people both in aiming down sights, and then keep practicing that along with coming out of aiming down sights before going back into it. So like I say, trying to mimic those scenarios you find yourself in Warzone. If you are struggling initially, try putting the sensitivity down just a little bit, until you can be snappy with your aim, but with a little bit of control. These mini drills ensure you can snap onto people at close range, and have the required incremental changes in your aim at distances. Basically keep doing this until you start to feel comfortable. After this, you can start going into games and practice your movement and aim together even more. If you're still feeling a little uncomfortable, stay in Plunder or play some multiplayer games to maximize the number of gunfights you end up in, and just to keep training those adjustments into your muscle memory. Using these tips, you'll get used to the linear response curve in no time, and I know everyone is different, but I think this can honestly benefit most people, particularly on Warzone where you're frequently having gunfights at all kinds of different ranges. Hopefully this helps you out. Let me know down in the comments what you think, and bye for now.